Hi, I'm Lauren, and welcome to the Raw Raw podcast. So, on the episode today, I spoke with Sharon Chapman about face reading. Sharon is an expert in so many modalities, and I was really wanting to, ask her so many questions about all the things she was interested in. But instead, I did keep the focus on face reading. Sharon clearly knew her stuff and was obviously very passionate about the subject of face reading. So let's get into it. Hi, I'm Lauren and welcome to the show. My guest today is Sharon Chapman. Sharon is a relationship coach, speaker, and author based at the Tranquil Glasshouse Mountains in Sunshine Coast, Australia. With over 20 years professional experience in assisting men and women, she uses her intuitive insight along with her expertise in 16 modalities that she integrates in her sessions. She helps with understanding and improving all relationships, whether it's with a partner, a family, a friend, or anyone you do business with. Sharon's joining me today to talk about face reading, how it works, where you can use it, and why it's an important skill to know. Welcome to the show, Sharon.
Oh, thank you, Lauren. It's a pleasure to be here.
I'm really looking forward to finding out about face reading because I think people like me probably need all the help I can get because I believe everyone right away half the time. So this is going to be really helpful. But before we dive into the subject at hand, I would love to know a little bit more about you. When I read your bio, I mentioned that you were an expert in 16 modalities. So I'm really keen on knowing more about what those are.
Yeah, sure. So that's 16, 6 modality, 16, not 60. I started off quite young at the age of 21. My brother suicided and I was left some inheritance money. And at that time I was in London and I had lots of possibilities to spend my money on, as you can imagine. And I put it straight into study. So I started with reflexology and aromatherapy. And that got me onto a path of adult learning. At high school, I left at 16. So it just allowed me to get back into study mode. And after that, I just kept going on and learning more modalities. So I learned crystal healing. I did a diploma in administrative management. And then I kind of got more into the mind and body. So I learned face reading, body reading, psychosomatic therapy, which is all the relationship between the mind and the body. And in combination with that, I learned NLP, hypnosis, inner child healing, and matrix re-imprinting. And a lot of the modalities that I studied were ones that I would go to a practitioner for and have a great breakthrough or find that I had a great experience myself. And then I would go, you know what, I want to learn more about this modality and I want to master it. So I started, I guess, just by going to people and finding out what worked for me. And then if I got a good result, then I would look into studying it and then sharing it with my own clients.
It's amazing. There are so many subjects there where I went, ooh, that's interesting. Ooh, that's interesting. So I have been forced to kind of narrow the interview down today on the subject of face reading. But for our listener at home,
of course,
thinking, wow, there's a lot more that I want to know about Sharon. We will have her back on the show later talking about some of these other modalities. So don't worry about that. Mm-hmm. Plus, Sharon has a website, and we're going to connect you with all that at the end of the show and put it in the show notes for people who want to know more. That's fascinating. I love learning a lot too. And it's so interesting, I'm sure, how all the things that you've been able to learn really build on each other. Do you find that you've been able to kind of create your own, almost your own specialty based on taking all these little nuggets of knowledge, would you say?
Absolutely. When clients come for sessions with me, I integrate 5 modalities into each session. So I do a minimum of 3 sessions. So by the end of the 3 sessions, they've normally experienced all 15 modalities. It just kind of, people gravitate to certain things. So I also do aurosoma, which is color therapy, and I have them set up in my treatment room. And so if somebody comes in and they gravitate to the colors and they go, oh my God, what's this? Then I know that that modality is going to work for them because already it's calling to them. Other people will come in and they'll be more focus based or logical based. So I'd go for modalities that have more structure. So yeah, I do combine all of the modalities and you get really good results by doing that.
It'd be interesting because not everyone would be open to, some of the things that you've explored, like NLP might be something that, isn't widely available to everyone, or at least they might not be open to it yet. So it's pretty cool that you're able to sort of assess the person and cater something to them. So I know that today we're going to talk about face reading, and we probably should just get right into it because I think that it's going to take up the entire hour. So can you tell me a bit about what face reading is exactly?
Yeah, well, it's actually the scientific name is physiognomy. And basically, it's the examination of the facial structure and all of the facial features. And there's a 92% accuracy when it's done by a trained professional. So basically, we're looking at the shape of your face and the shape of your forehead, the eye positioning, the eye size, the nose, the cheeks, the mouth, the chin. It's basically your whole structure plus all of how your face is made up. And that tells a story about who you are, your characteristics, your strengths, everything with regards to what you'd best be suited for work, and what you like in relationships, your learning style, that kind of thing. So if you know what you're looking for, it is very revealing.
Wow, so you can tell all that by somebody's face.
Yes, just by looking. Now, to go into a consult with somebody, I would always get their permission before I actually read their face. But there are a couple of things that I can say. You can look at a person's overall face shape. That will tell you the person's sole purpose, as in what they have come into this lifetime to actually achieve. So what I normally do is I look at the face shape first, and I look at the most defining feature on the face. So for some people, they have beautiful big eyes. Some people have a prominent nose. Some people, you notice that they have cheekbones or a chin that kind of really catches your eye. So what I do is I just notice two things. And to actually do a face reading, I need somebody's permission to go deeper than that.
But do you kind of intuitively, I mean, you're looking at my face right now. So are you kind of looking at me in a shallow sense, right? Like not actually looking into my soul perhaps? Or how can you talk to somebody face to face while having that sort of boundary?
Yeah, well, it's a respect thing, and you do need somebody's permission to be able to look into that. So, what I say, it's like looking at a book cover. So, I can look at the front book, the front of the book, and the back of the book, but to actually look at the chapters in between, that's for you to give me permission because it can be a very personal session when you're actually talking about certain aspects of the face and what they can represent. And quite a lot of people become quite emotional during a face reading session because we're also talking about your family, your generational heritage, certain thought patterns or belief systems that may have been passed down to you that are showing up to me during a consultation. So out of respect, I only kind of look at a couple of things when I'm in front of somebody. Otherwise, I start going into practitioner mode and then I can't really I wouldn't be able to focus on this interview if I started reading your face.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's good to know. So
You're perfectly safe, Lauren.
okay. Good. I was about to turn my camera off. So that being said, do they have this natural sort of tendency when, okay, let me rephrase. So when you're reading somebody's face, can it change over time? So would you give a different reading to, say, a teenager or a child based on the structure of their face isn't fully developed yet compared to someone in their 30s? And then, as people change and get older, do you find that you would get a different reading based on that, or does it stay the same?
Yes, you can get a different reading. And we've all seen people that have gone away on holiday, or they've left a toxic relationship or a really bad job. And you look at them and you go, wow, it looks like you're 10 years younger. You look amazing. And we've also seen the opposite of when somebody is really stressed in certain situation, and you can look at them and 3 months later, they can look as though they've aged 10 years. So everything that's going on in your life does show up on your face. So yes, from a child, you'd have a very different reading to being an adolescent, and then to being an adult. So with face reading, you can even have a face reading once a year, because the facial features do change. And it's really interesting you say that, because quite often somebody will meet a significant partner, and you'll do a face reading 1 year, and after they've been in that partnership, the traits of the face have actually changed a bit to match their significant other. And that I've seen a lot of times. So the face can actually start change within 12 months.
Wow, that's amazing. Do you put a lot of effort on people being able to change their face? So I remember one time someone told me at a party that this is going to sound ridiculous. Anyway, there was a woman at the party and she was older. She was probably in her maybe 70s, but she looked in her 50s. And one of the people at the party said it's because her cheekbones are so well defined that her face doesn't tend to droop in the same way that, other people. And so from that point on, I kept thinking, ooh, I really want to have prominent cheekbones. So I guess my question is, if you're talking about how the face can eventually sometimes change to morph into, maybe something similar that you see all the time, like your partner, can your face also change based on how you want it to look?
You have between 40 to 120,000 thoughts every single day. So if you keep telling yourself, oh, I'm going to have a turkey neck like my mother, or something that you look at in your family, a physical trait that you don't like, and you tell yourself you're going to get that over and over, guess what's going to happen? So my suggestion to people is always, I look and feel happy and vibrant and very alive, and I love the way I look. And however that reflects, it's nice and general. But yes, you can actually emphasize that my eyes are bright and shiny and uplifted. And I have seen people do that for a number of years. And there was one particular lady whose mother's eyes, her eyelids drooped. And so she could see that hers was starting to droop a little. And the only solution for that was to go in for a physical surgery. So she started doing the self-talk every single day. And within about, I think it was about 14 months, I saw her down the track. And her eyes looked completely different. And she'd done nothing else except start doing positive affirmations for her face. Now, when you understand what the eyes actually do in face reading, it's about understanding that and putting affirmations in. So her mother had a very different perspective than her, and that showed on her face. So yes, I do believe you can do that, and it works. I've seen it.
Can you talk a little bit more about affirmations? Because some of our listeners might not be familiar with that. I
Mm-hmm.
personally have been using affirmations for a very long time, like probably nearly 20 years now. I just aged myself, 18 years or so. Um, so it's kind of part of my existence. I've been able to do that. But some people, the whole affirmation concept is still very new to them. So do you think you could talk a little bit more about that subject?
Yeah, I would just say it's any word or phrase that uplifts you. Keep it really simple. So for some people, they just like saying the word, uplifting or positive energy. Or some people like to say a phrase with ease and grace and at my own pace. It has to be a word or a sentence or a phrase that allows you to feel good or uplifted, and you just repeat it to allow yourself to keep in a good place. That's all it is. It really is that simple.
That's pretty cool. So all I need to do is go cheekbones every morning when I wake up, and that will.
Yeah, well, it's interesting you say that, because cheekbones represent ambition. So
Uh-huh.
if it's important for you, there must be a part of you where ambition is going to be a priority for you. Therefore, the cheekbones reflect that.
Interesting. So I definitely am a very ambitious person. So that isn't, yeah, that makes sense to me when you said that. So
Hmm.
can we talk a little bit? I know you kind of, alluded to it at the beginning, but some of the benefits of people being able to have their face read. I mean, did you go and get your face read and that's how you even heard about this? Because I've never heard about this before myself. Body language, yes, but not about being able to read faces and how that would benefit a person.
Yeah, I was introduced to Herman, the late Herman Muller, who taught this on the Gold Coast in Australia. And he had written a book, and I went to see him in person. I was waiting in his waiting room and reading his face reading book. And I was so immersed in the book that when he came out, he said my name and, you know, welcomed me, and I didn't even hear him. I was completely absorbed by it. And then I did the course, and he stood us up in front of the whole group, and he had me as one of his practices. And so because I have a square face shape, that means I'm very grounded. Um, I'm a straight shooter and that kind of thing. And so he came up to me and he said the complete opposite. So he said, you're not a person who would follow through on their word, and you're actually a bit of a wuss. And unbeknown to me, he'd already told the audience to watch for what was happening. Unbeknown to me, both of my fists became very hard, and I was clenched, ready to punch this guy out. And what he had done was tap into my value system just by reading my face. And what he did was say the complete opposite just to get a reaction from me. And I didn't know any of this had happened. Like, it just happened in an instant. And that's how integral this is to our values. So when I look at somebody, I'm already looking at what their value system is displaying to me. So once I had that experience and I learned the face reading, it was like a week course. I had to practice on about 100 people, and yeah, it was just the most wonderful way of connecting with people that I'd never had before. And everybody wants to feel loved, accepted, respected, and cherished for who they are. And face reading allows you to see them in a way that's unique to them.
Do you think that people subconsciously can read faces? And, you know, that might, you know, be because when you see someone, very often you just kind of decide whether or not they're attractive or not, I guess, or they're approachable, you want to be friends with them, or, you know, sometimes you would totally go out of your way to avoid a person basically because of how they look. So do you think that we read faces every day, even though we don't know we are?
Yes, everybody is a face reader. And I often say by the time you get to adulthood, you've already read over 1 million faces. And people will go, well, how can that be? And I go, well, if you even walk in an airport or a train station, you will see up to 2,000 or 3,000 faces within a matter of an hour. So you can see how many people you can actually see. So yes, I do believe that we are, I've done scientific studies, and from the age of 3 months, infants are able to start reading faces. And they did a study on male infants and female infants. And what they found is that the female infants had 10 facial expressions that they had mastered by the age of about 5 or 6 months that they used around their caregivers, and that was to get more care. So they had learnt to tilt their head, they had learnt to smile in a certain way, raise their eyebrows, all of that kind of thing that they had learnt. And the boys had learned 3 things. So the girls had learned a lot more of how to navigate their face to connect with their caregivers, and the boys were a bit more simple. They were at 3, but it still goes to show that by even in infancy, we are learning to utilize our faces to get our needs and wants met.
It makes a lot of sense when you say that. I never really thought about it much, but when you say that, you go, yeah, that makes perfect sense. So I don't know if you've ever talked to anybody who, so I know some people and they're not very good at recognizing faces. They're better with, let's say, names, for example. For me, I've always been very good at recognizing faces. Is there a certain reason why some people can recognize faces? Are they more, do you think, prone to be able to do this kind of work, or is it just the way that people are made?
Yeah, we all have different learning styles. I'm a visual kinesthetic, so I'm a very visual person. So I'm good at seeing the similarities and the differences in anything that I look at. And kinesthetic means that I touch, so I experience something. I actually have to physically touch it and learn from it to go through it. So if you are a visual person, then this modality will appeal to you. That doesn't mean that if you're not a visual person, you can't receive it, because I've given face readings to people who are not visual people, but they still receive the benefit of it, but it may not come naturally to them. So they wouldn't necessarily look for it or want or have an interest in it because it doesn't come naturally.
Okay, fair enough. Do you, um, are you able to read? Okay, I want to word this properly. When you're dealing with people of different ethnicities and sexes and such, do you get a different reading based on the structure of, say, an African American person over an, a Caucasian person, if they have the same structure, or is everyone sort of different just without race being a factor?
That's a really good question, because there's cultural understanding, and our upbringings are cultural. So quite often with certain cultures, they'll have similar facial features or structures, but then there could be other features that are very personal to them. But yes, you can look at some different cultures and go, there are some similarities with the structure to the face and how the face is actually made up. But when that person is in front of you, it feels very individual, because you're going over every single aspect of the face, and so it's very personalized.
Okay, fair enough. So when you were using that example earlier about how you were basically set up to react at that course,
Yeah.
and your fists automatically, or your hands automatically went into fists because you were told something that was an untruth to you, do you
Mhm.
sort of look at the body when you're also reading faces, or is the body, is the face enough? Essentially, you don't need to look at the two together.
Yeah, we definitely read the body at the same time. So I went on to do Herman's course for learning how to read the body as well. So quite often when you are reading the face, the body will start to respond in ways that the person isn't even aware of. So if there's a congruency in what you are saying, their body language will start to shift. They'll start to relax. They'll do a deep sigh. Their hands will open. You'll find that there's a lot more laughter, and they will be open conversation. Whereas if it's something that you're touching on that's quite sensitive to them, straight away that you can notice a change in the color of the face. You can notice that their eyes are looking down. You can see that there's possibly some tears coming up. You can see the body language closing a bit. Sometimes you actually see the body tremble or react to something that you're touching on, and that could mean that somebody is holding some kind of emotional trauma, and you're touching on it, and you then have the option of saying to the client, look, there's something here that we can go into a little bit more deeply. I can see that this is affecting you. Would you like me to continue with this, or would you like to move on to something else? And some people are very happy to go, yeah, you know what, I can feel it in my body. There's something that I need to talk about, or deal with this in a way that I haven't before. But you have a choice whether you want to explore that a bit more.
Now, I just met you, but I fully trust you. So I know that you mean what you say when you say that you need people's permission before you read their face. But I would imagine that that skill has also served you well when dealing with people in the general public. You might not need to read their face to still gauge, their hand action or their demeanor, or do you know what I'm trying to say? I would imagine that you've been able to utilize this skill while still maintaining some level of privacy for people to your advantage.
Absolutely. If I am undertaking any kind of relationship, whether it's a partner, family, friend, or somebody I do business with, I'm going to utilize my ability to connect with that person as much as I can, and get the best from both of us. So we're both getting the best from this interaction. So I guess what I do is I just put my intent in, that anything that I need to be shown by this person will be shown to me. So what I'm looking for when I'm interacting with somebody is congruency. So they could be in a really, say, upset state, and they're, you know, having a bit of a vent, or they're using some colorful language, but everything that's playing out in front of me is in total congruency. They're just having a bit of a vent because something hasn't gone right in their day. So that's fine by me. What I'm looking for is incongruency, when the face and the body are saying two different things. And then I'll be like, something's not right here. Is this because this person's maybe a little bit shy? Is it because they have, you know, just had something happen in their day, or they could have had a relationship breakup? You just don't know what has gone on in that person's day. And so then I go, okay, I'm going to give this a little bit more time, a little bit more attention, and see why there would be an incongruency here. But if there's congruency, I go, yep, this feels right. There's nothing for me to be concerned about. So of course, number one is always your personal safety. And face reading has been used for a long time. You know that when you walk into a room when you're a child, you'd see a look on your parents or your caregiver's face, and you go, oh, this isn't a good time, and you put your head down and keep walking. So the first thing that we always do is we monitor the face and other people's body language for safety. That's the first thing that everybody does unconsciously. Then after that, what we're looking for is congruency or incongruency.
Right. So you know what you made me think of when you said that is Border Patrol.
Yeah.
So you would imagine that they would all be maybe in not this exact modality, but in the same sort of thing, where they're looking at the face and then they're connecting that with your body.
Yes, and what can happen is you can lie for about 60 seconds. So if you practice it really well, you can get away with it for about a minute. But then there are little things that the face and body do that give it away. So you would have to be incredibly skilled to be able to get past one of those people who is trained. And quite often it's not just one of them looking at you, there's two or three, and there's a camera, so there can be trained professionals behind that camera. Now, in addition to that, if they stop you and they're looking through your goods and whatever, that means that you could be detained for 5, 10, 15 minutes, depending, and all the time they are monitoring you, especially when they walk away. And it's funny you say that, because every time I go through an airport, I always get stopped. And I always joke with my husband, you know, I must look so suspicious every time I get stopped. But it's like they're just doing their job, and they are very skilled at what they do.
Maybe, do you think it's because you could potentially be hard to read because you're aware of how to behave?
No, I get very giggly. So whenever I'm around those kinds of areas, I always start giggling, or something stupid that happened in the morning will happen. Like, I remember one guard said to me, "Have you had marijuana today?" And it seemed like such a silly thing, because I'd had a green smoothie. And I mean, it doesn't look very attractive. It's green and it's all gloopy, and I just started giggling, because I thought, if you only knew the slop that I actually had for breakfast this morning, you would not be asking me this question. But because he asked me that, and I got a picture of my green smoothie and how ridiculous it looked, I started giggling.
Right.
And so he looked at me, and then he must have obviously flagged me, because then the sniffer dog was looking around me. But I get giggly, and then I must look suspicious, but I don't know what it is. I just start laughing.
That's funny. Yeah, because looking at you, I would never pull you over in an airport. You just do not suit the profile of what I would think somebody up to no good would look like.
Mm-hmm.
And for those listeners at home who want to know what Sharon looks like, you have to go to the show notes, and I'll link you to her website and you can see what I'm talking about. It's funny because when I go to the airport, I'm not up to anything dodgy at all, but I get so nervous. And pretty much every time they talk to me for 5 to 10 seconds and I'm let through. So I'm always confused by that, because I think that, am I giving away some kind of strange, sort of sign because I'm so nervous? But clearly there isn't something that they're picking up on, that maybe there's a congruency with my face and my body or something like that.
Yeah, and quite often we're picking up on the nerves around each other. When you're in a confined space with hundreds of other people, all speaking
Yeah.
different languages, and some people have rushed to get their flight. Some people catch their flights within 5 minutes of boarding. So quite often what we're doing in those environments is we're around hundreds and hundreds of people who are stressed. And quite often we pick up on their energy and it shows in our body and face when it doesn't actually belong to us.
Oh, yeah, that's true. So, in regards to that, I want to go back a little bit to what you were talking about with the inconsistencies with the face and the body, which would probably, I'm assuming, arise if somebody's lying or telling a mistruth. So I know that you said that people can lie for about 60 seconds and it would take a real trained professional to lie for longer than that. So what about people who lie naturally all the time, be constantly giving out these weird inconsistencies with their face and body?
Yeah, well, see, I guess what you're referring to is a compulsive liar. So, a truth is a sincere attempt to provide accurate information, and a lie is deliberately choosing to mislead someone without giving prior notification. So, quite often, if somebody is trying to cover something up, they're constantly on guard because they're always trying to get one step ahead of what the next question would be. And there's actually 5 different ways that people can lie, and there's micro expressions that happen in 1/25th of a second. So you can't actually fake it with somebody who is trained. But there are 5 types of lies if you'd like me to go over those.
I would love that.
Yeah. So a straight lie is, did you steal my bike? No, I didn't. When in fact you did. So that's a straight lie. The second one is an admission. So if I was selling a car and I said, oh, the car's had regular maintenance, while I've been leaving out that the engine really needs costly repairs. So that's number 2 is an admission. So I'm leaving something out on purpose. And the third one is character confirmation. So if somebody said, did you take $5,000 from the company reserves? And I responded, I've worked here for 20 years. What that is a character confirmation. How dare you ask me that? Because I've done good in another area. And then it puts doubt on the person and the question. The fourth one is exaggeration and ridicule. So I did 150 push-ups this morning. And then the last one is the dodge. So if somebody says something and you go, wow, what can I say? And it seems genuinely positive when you think someone is actually being quite hideous. So, wow, what can I say? Is just like, I'm not really sure how to respond to that, but it's a dodge. So you're not actually acknowledging it.
Do you think that people lie every day?
Well, I think you're truthful around the people that you really love and trust. And if somebody is asking you something and you don't feel safe or you don't really want to go into it, it's not really a lie. You're not saying something that's not truth. All that you're saying is, I don't want to share how I'm feeling with you, that particular person. Whereas if a partner or a loved one came in and asked that same question, you'd tell them what was really going on.
Right. Okay. Do you think that people, I don't know how you were raised, but I was raised in a household where you weren't allowed to lie. It wasn't an acceptable thing to do. So, if people were raised, let's say kids who lie, who just naturally lie, is that something that you think that they can potentially grow out of, or is that something that, you know, is a characteristic that tends to stay with a person? No, I'm kind of getting off track, but yeah, I'm curious.
Yeah, it depends if there's a consequence. So if a child continually lies and they get their needs met, then it's going to serve them. If a child lies and there's a negative consequence, then they'll go, oh, I'm not really sure if I should do that again because I don't want that to happen. But if a child continually lies and it's a positive consequence, therefore they get their needs met, then they'll keep doing it until they come up against somebody or some boundary that will actually go, well, that was a blatant lie, you've been found out. But what we do is we actually shift our language and our face reading, all of that. We do that to get our needs met. And so quite often when it starts from childhood, children will naturally like to see what they can get away with and what they can't. And we've all done it. But if there's no consequence in place, that's how it starts. And quite often it can go into adolescence, and then it becomes fun. Then it becomes a game. Then they start doing it to authority figures, and then it gets into adulthood. And when it gets to that stage, then quite often it's it's a lot more serious than if it was done by a child.
Yeah, of course. And also probably more difficult to outgrow that sort of habit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about that. In relation to face reading and somebody telling you untruths, what are some tips that you have for people to watch out for in relation to see whether or not someone's telling the truth?
Yeah. So, in answer to that question, I'd say always go with your gut instinct. If something doesn't feel right, if you're having a conversation with somebody and you feel that there's an incongruency or that the truth isn't being told, the first thing that we normally do is feel it in the gut. So, if your gut is saying, something's not quite right here, always listen to it. With regards to the face, what you're looking for is facial expressions that don't want to maintain eye contact. So quite often people will look away, they will look down, they will lick their lips because they are actually unconsciously nervous. So they're trying to think of what to say. They may repeat something back to you to give them more time to think about an answer. So there's just different things that they learn along the way, basically to stall you. So the first thing is gut instinct. You can also look at the color of the face. Quite often you'll see a flushing of the face or the neck if somebody is being untruthful to you. The eye contact is a very big one. And then it's looking at the licking of lips, scratching of face, any kind of distraction that the hands are doing, whenever the hands touch the face, it's usually some form of distraction of what's actually going on. So I would look for those things first.
So, who do you think can learn to read faces? Can anybody do it?
Anybody can learn face reading if they have an interest in it. And just remember that every day you're already reading thousands of faces. It's just learning what the different facial features mean and understanding them on a whole different level.
So, how about integrating that face reading with reading the body as well? Are there any indicators that people should look for, maybe to find out if someone's really interested in getting to know them, or if somebody is, not, I guess, if they're lying, or if there's somebody you should stay away for? Are there telltale signs in our bodies as well that you might be able to mention?
Yeah, so when you're with somebody, it feels like ease and flow. It's like a tennis match. You hit the ball over the net and the ball gets hit back. And that's what a conversation is. We're looking for ease and flow. So when somebody's in front of you, they're showing genuine interest. That is, they are maintaining eye contact. They're not looking all around the room. They are leaning in. Therefore, they are trying to maintain a connection with you. They are looking as though their body is facing towards you. That's a big one. So if somebody is standing there and their feet are pointing in another direction, quite often the feet will tell you exactly where their attention is. It could be on another person or another subject. So it's about the congruency with the conversation. And we've all been there where you're having a conversation with somebody and you can just feel that they're really not that interested. And so quite often, if somebody is there in front of me, I will question, well, perhaps this person, is a bit shy. Maybe they haven't spoken to a female for a while. You just don't know what has gone on in that person's life. So you don't always judge it. You just notice it. And then what you can do is bring it into the conversation in a very loving way and see their response, because sometimes people are very shy. They're not used to speaking with people, and especially people like me that they perceive that they're reading them when I'm actually not. That can be a little bit intimidating for some people.
Yeah, no, that's good, because I kind of did wonder where judgment fits in, but you said it nicely there, where you're not judging, you're just noticing. And there's sort of a difference with that. Is making an assumption the same as judging? So you want to notice as opposed to assume that you know?
Yeah, so what you're doing is just noticing and just allowing them to be who they are. And remember that with some cultures, so when I used to help with recruitment, and there was certain cultures that didn't shake hands initially, or eye contact to them meant something that you had to gain their respect before you gave somebody extended eye contact. So for them, looking away was actually a sign of respect, whereas to me, that was actually, oh, this person might be deceitful. So when I learned that, quite often there's cultural upbringings and belief systems that you also have to be aware of. So what you do is you go into the conversation and you put the intent in that both of you are going to get out of this conversation or this interaction what you both need. And then you're able to just relax. And if somebody is showing you incongruencies, I remember one guy and he was looking a bit uncomfortable. He needed to go to the loo. He just felt a bit embarrassed to say, look, I'm really busting. Do you mind if I come back in 5 minutes? Because we were having a really interesting conversation. And so I noticed he was getting a bit jittery and stuff. Now I could have gone, oh, well, he's incongruent. He's not telling me the truth. He's not interested in me or this conversation. And he just needed to go to the loo. So I think sometimes if you are in there trying to observe it and judge it, you're never going to get anywhere. You go in with, I'm going to go in to get the best out of this interaction for both people. And whatever they show me, I'm going to interpret with love and compassion. And if something comes to my awareness, now I just ask people. So, for example, with that guy, I said, all of a sudden you just kind of seem a bit jittery. Is everything okay? And he said, I'm actually busting to go to the toilet. And I said, off you go. I'll be here when you get back. And he said, oh, cheers for that. And that's all it was. Sometimes people just need you to notice what they're actually showing you. And sometimes, as a child, you'll stand there and you'll be wanting an adult to notice. And sometimes people still do that as adults.
Yeah, it's interesting how, this really does come down to just, taking stock of your environment and noticing the small, telltale signs. And, really that comes down to being in the moment and not being lost in your head where you're missing everything. So it's kind of an interesting opportunity to come back and really take inventory of where you are. I heard before that if somebody shakes your hand and they do it, when you shake someone's hand and it's kind of like flimsy and floppy hand, that means they don't actually want to meet you. Have you ever heard of such a thing?
Yeah, I've heard of those handshakes, and it could also be you just don't know where that hand has been. It could be a way of, look, I don't actually want to shake your hand right now, but I'm just going to be polite. Now, the hand has a main chakra in it. So the why hand shaking actually started is because it was a way for people to connect their energy centers or chakras without actually hugging. So that's a very professional way to connect on an energetic level. We put our hand out and we shake because it keeps a meter or so body distance away. You're not going to go up to somebody in a job interview and give them a full-on hug. However, a handshake says, I am open and willing to start a relationship and a connection with you, and connecting the chakras in the hand is one way to actually start a more of a deeper connection. So that's quite often if we're meeting somebody and it's more of a formality, it's in a way saying that I want a deeper connection with you.
Oh, that's cool. Do you ever read, I'm not sure if you're a celebrity magazine reader, but sometimes they have those body experts and they explain while the people aren't really into each other because they're standing this way or that way. Is there any validity in that?
Yes, you can see when there's a congruency. It doesn't matter if it's with a mother and a child, or a father and a child, or friends, or an intimate relationship. There's just an ease and flow about it. So if people are attempting to fake it, they can put on an act for a few minutes, but after that you begin to see the telltale signs. And we've all been there, we've all done that, where we've seen people that have been putting on an act and something doesn't feel right, but again, gut instinct normally will lead you back. But it's the ease and flow, it's they converse easily, the body language flows, there's a closeness, there's laughter, there's happiness. Or it could be a situation such as a funeral where there's immense grief and there's just a sincere presence. So what you're looking for with each person is there's a presence with each other, and you can't fake that presence.
If somebody's a naturally shy person and they want to get a little bit more maybe out there and be a little bit put themselves out there, are there any tips or tricks that people can almost go against what their natural tendency is to do? Or will that show up like an inconsistency as well?
I was a naturally shy person, so I can completely relate to that. So I think sometimes the old motto, fake it till you make it, people often go a little bit too far the other way. So if they're naturally shy, they will learn some tips to be a little bit more extroverted, and it doesn't actually suit their personality or their nature. So what I suggest is maybe just amping it up by about 20 or 30%. So for each time that you go out, if you would never approach somebody, approach two people. Just go up to them and say hi. So you're just pushing the boundaries just a little bit. Go up to two people, shake their hand and start a conversation. And that can be a big deal for a lot of people. It could also be in a conversation, allowing yourself to be a little bit vulnerable. So you can start a conversation with something that has happened to you recently. And that way it gives the other person permission to go, oh yeah, well that happened to me or one of my family members. So what you're doing is you're not actually trying to change who you are. You're enhancing who you are, but you're just doing a little bit. 20 or 30% comes across as very natural. But what a lot of people are taught is that they have to be completely different, and they try to mimic others who, if an introvert is trying to mimic an extrovert's body language or their traits, it's going to look completely fake. And it may be done with the best intent, but it looks and feels incongruent, and nobody's going to believe it.
Right. So you're basically saying be authentic with yourself while still being at maybe the edge of comfort,
That's
sort of
it.
thing.
Just a few more little things that you wouldn't do. So, for example, if you go to a business meeting, you could say you'd be the first one to put up your hand and offer a suggestion, whereas before you just sit back and not do anything. Or it could be going into a room full of people and going, you know what, I'm going to go up and introduce myself to two people that I've never met before. And quite often when people do that, they go, you know what, they were really nice. It wasn't half as bad as I expected. So it's just where your confidence level is at, but just going out of your comfort zone just a little so it doesn't feel too much and incongruent to you, and so it will be received as sincere by others.
So for yourself, you said that you were a bit shy. Did you sort of do the same thing? And were you able to notice that you were able to stack on that? So for example, what was your edge of your comfort zone? You were sort of over time able to push further out of that?
Absolutely. I was painfully shy. So if you spoke to me when I was 14, I would have gone completely red, right from all of my chest right up to my whole face. That's how shy I was. So yes, I like the idea of stacking with the confidence. So little by little, I started traveling. I had to go into shops and order things for the first time, hail a cab, just things that I'd never done before. And that at the time, my heart was like beating out of my chest. I remember the first time in London having to hail a cab. And it was just basically putting your hand up and stopping a moving car. And that blew my mind. Little things like that that you look back on, you go, oh, wow, I've done so much. Same with public speaking. The first time I spoke was in front of 8 people, and it felt incredibly uncomfortable to me. Now I can speak in front of hundreds or thousands of people, and it's not a big deal. But at that moment in time, 8 people was my limit. So you've just got to start where you're at. And I think just go up 20, 30% each time. And it feels doable, but it also feels congruent with you. And people receive it as you just going out of your way just a little bit.
Hmm. Yeah, that's good, because you don't start where you're going to end. You have to work your way there. That's for sure.
Hmm. Hmm.
Can we talk before we wrap up a little bit more about introverts and extroverts? You mentioned that earlier. Do you think there's such a thing as a full extrovert and an introvert, or are these just kind of generalized terms that we're giving people, and does everyone fit into them?
Yeah, well, my understanding, an introvert is somebody who obtains their energy from being alone, whereas an extrovert is somebody who obtains their energy or life force from being in a social situation or around people. So for me, I know I love socializing, but whenever I need to feel balanced, I'm always by myself. And that was a surprise to me when somebody identified that my primary state is an introvert, but when I choose to be, I like to be social and extrovert. And so I think some people have a disposition of wanting to be alone and liking being alone, and that feels natural to them. For me, it wasn't until my mid 30s until I could actually feel comfortable with being by myself and nobody else around. So sometimes I think we use the extrovert as a distraction. And I think what's
Mhm.
really good is that we can be by ourselves, we can live by ourselves, we like our own company, we can spend a day with ourselves and not feel as though we need to be with anybody else. So for me, I used to distract myself a lot with being around a lot of people, but I also got quite exhausted by it. Yet, whenever I want to balance, I know that sitting by myself, meditating, reading a good book, doing things like that is what brings me back to feeling energized again.
Do extroverts and introverts, in your experience, tend to act differently with their face and their body as well? Or could you have an introvert and an extrovert basically with the same mannerisms, but they have this sort of different ways that they get energy, I suppose?
I think there's an introvert and extrovert in all of us. I've seen people who are reserved and who you'd classify as an extreme introvert. That is that they are very quiet, their demeanor is very closed, their body language is very closed. You would say they came across as quite reserved. And then you ask them about a topic that lights them up. And it's like a different person in front of you. They become alive, their body language is open, their voice the volume of their voice escalates, the face lights up, the mannerisms change. And I've seen that a number of times. So I think sometimes with extroverts, they have a lot of different subjects that light them up. Whereas the introverts are a lot more decisive, are more discerning, and there's a few things that light them up, but they just keep their cards close to their chest until they reveal that.
So, speaking of revealing that, do you find that when people have had, if they're intoxicated on some level, that they tend to really express who they are? We know that often people have been said to make difficult decisions, or maybe decisions they wouldn't normally make when they're intoxicated. Do you think this is a natural thing that they're wanting to let out or do? Or do you think it really is just based on whatever substance that they're on?
Yeah, I think there's a sweet spot. I mean, I know for me, if I have one or two drinks, I feel really good and I can get up on the dance floor and I can tell a great joke. And it's just like you're you, but amplified. But after that two drinks, then it all starts to change. And I'm not in such a good state, or, it's not really you. So I think there's a sweet spot. But I think a lot of people, when you've had a little bit of something, it feels so good you keep going. And then it starts kind of, it's like a bit of a steady decrease. But I would say that I
Yeah.
have seen people have a drink and just relax, and who they are is amplified. And that's really beautiful to see, because it's as if they let go of a few inhibitions and they
Yeah.
they speak a bit more freely. And I think what they do, from my perspective, is they let go of their own self-judgment. So when they've
Yeah.
relaxed a bit, they're not focusing on, should I say this, is this right, they're actually just speaking from the heart, and the other person is there and receiving it, and that's what feels so good. But normally they may be a little bit more critical or self-judgmental, and that's what's going on in their head, whereas the drink just allows them to relax a little bit more.
Right. True. All right. Well, I've really enjoyed talking to you today. We're basically at the hour. I knew this was going to fly by. I knew it. Can I ask you a couple of questions, just sort of off topic? And then before I do that, actually, I will mention to our listener at home that you have written a book on how to do face reading, and it's available on your website for only $9.99, which is cheap when it can transform your entire existence. So is that, I'll just put the link for your book, Sharon, on the show notes, or is there anything you want people to keep in mind?
Yeah, it's basically 128 pages. It's full color, and because face reading is a very visual subject, it's got lots of different photos and explanations. So you'll be able to read your own face, but also have a look at the different facial features and be able to notice things on other people.
So if I were to read my own face, that would almost help me with the personality test of some sort, right? And I might be able to sort of focus more on my strengths and, as opposed to working on things that aren't. Would you say that that's one of the benefits as well?
Yeah, it's like a shortcut because what your facial features are revealing is what your natural abilities are, where your talents, all of that flows naturally from you. So you can actually fast track the line of work in your career that you're most suited to by looking at yourself honestly and openly and going, well, this is what I'm here to do. And my facial features actually confirm this.
I love that. So I just wanted to know a little bit more about you because I find you very interesting, especially with all the learning that you've done. What is the best piece of advice that you've ever been given?
There's two sayings that come to mind. If in doubt, don't, because I think sometimes we tend to rush ahead. And I think, again, it's listening to your gut instinct and that little, that doesn't feel right. So if in doubt, don't. And the other piece of advice is follow your heart and you'll always be in the right place.
That's great. Who do you go to for advice if you don't know what to do?
Oh, I have lots of practitioners that I see. I still love going for sessions because I'm always learning something. And because I
Mm.
treat a lot of clients, I still see people. So if somebody pops up in the media or I meet them at a business meeting or through friends and they're doing a certain modality, I'm the first to book in because I still love exploring things. But now it's a little bit more of pampering time for me. So it's like my time out, somebody focusing on me and me learning something more about myself. And yeah, so I'll always be exploring different modalities and practices.
Out of all the modalities that you do practice, do you have one that is the closest to your heart that you kind of love a little bit more than the others?
Yeah, I would have to say face reading and also EFT, the emotional freedom technique, the tapping. So I do advanced techniques in that. And I've noticed that myself and a lot of clients have been able to release a lot of trauma. And I focus very much on generational trauma. So we focus on put the intent in healing 7 generations. And I've noticed that has really made a significant difference in my life. I can actually feel the difference within like a 2 minute period and go, wow, I can really feel a shift in that. And I think you need to feel it. You need to feel a difference in something to know and have the quantified, tangible evidence that it's actually working. So yeah, I guess the face reading because it comes so naturally to me, and I guess the EFT because I've felt the positive differences so quickly.
Do you have information on your website about EFT as well if people are curious about that? Because that's a
Yeah. hmm
really
So
cool
on
thing.
my website, there's a modalities like a drop down box of the modalities that I practice, and all 16 are listed there with descriptions on all of them. So yeah, and I've also got a Facebook group that I let people in, and quite often I'll share different aspects of the modalities that I teach and share as well.
Okay, and we could put the links and all the information for our
Mm.
listener in the show notes for that. What is a favorite book, or what are maybe a couple books that you want to name that have been maybe made an impact on you?
Yeah, there was one that I read recently, and it's called It Didn't Start With You. And it's all about how um, thought patterns, belief systems, and traumas can get passed down through the generations and how quickly we can heal them. That was one of the major ones that I read. And I guess one of the initial ones that I read was Louise Hay, You Can Change Your Life. That was kind of like my first self-help book. But yeah, I'm always got a book on the go at the moment. I've got a health and fitness one, but I think the one that made the most impact was It Didn't Start With You.
Okay, well, I'll link to both those books. And I did want to link to Louise anyway, because she's the goddess of affirmations. So I've got the book, You Can Heal Your Body. Have you heard of that one?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah, so that one's really cool too. I'll link to that as well. So is there anything today that I didn't ask you that you wanted to talk about in relation to face reading?
I think another one that would be really good is the forehead. So quite often people are wanting to know what other people's learning styles are. So this is one of the things that I always share with people is if you are in a situation where you are doing business with somebody, you are trying to teach somebody something, so it's particularly good for any kind of teacher or tutor or trainer, or also even if you're a nurse or a counselor, any of those people you're trying to communicate with a patient. So basically, when you look at somebody's side on, if they have a flat forehead, there it is, it goes straight up and down. That means they are a step-by-step process learner. So how I would speak with that person is I would go step by step over maybe 5 things of what was going to happen. So straight away, if I see a straight up and down forehead, I know step by step learner. I need to do this. This person needs a step by step approach. The other one, there's actually 3 kinds. The second one is that it slants back. So it actually starts at the eyebrows, but when you look at them on the side, it actually slants backwards. And these kinds of people are very quick learners. They don't need a process. They learn on the fly, and they kind of learn by experience and doing what they shouldn't do. They kind of learn the opposite way. So when I see that, I'm just like, oh, here's a real experiential learner. And then the third one is a very curved forehead. And the curved foreheads are very creative. So Walt Disney is a classic example. He had a fantastically curved forehead, and quite often we see the curved forehead on children, and they grow out of it by around 14, 15. But the adults that retain that curve in their forehead, you know that they have fantastic artistic and creative, and their imagination is always going to be alive. And Walt Disney is a perfect example of that.
You know, when you're saying that, it made me feel honestly a little bit sad that this doesn't seem to be more of a mainstream thing, because it could probably change a lot of people's lives if they were being taught things in a way that was accessible to them learning it. You know, I'm sure, yeah.
I think with all of the complementary therapies or alternate practices, there's been a huge uprise in people learning them, wanting to know more about it, and people are wanting more deeper and authentic communication with each other. So these kinds of modalities are becoming more and more popular, and people are interested. In fact, I did a cruise a few years ago, and I was invited on to do talks on face reading, how people they can lie to you, different things. And the first talk we had 80 people. The second talk we had 120. The third one we had about 250. And by the fourth talk, the room wasn't big enough. They had to shift us to a whole new room because there was several hundred people on there. So that's how quickly, and that was within a 10-day cruise, that's how quickly word got around the boat, oh, you want to go and see this person. And that was just on one ship. So I think that if it's available, people do want to learn about it, because everybody is looking to feel a deeper connection and to feel heard and respected and validated by those that they're communicating with. And if you know a few of the basics, your relationships are going to be hugely impacted and improved on.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And I guess that is a hopeful way of looking at it as well, that there are people that are exploring these ideas and these people are raising children. So, hopefully they're all growing up. Well, a lot of people grow up with, kind of a more of an open mind than maybe what has been done previously. Yeah. It's really cool. I really learned a lot today. Thank you so much. So I'll put a link to your book. I know for sure I'm going to buy it because I'm very interested in this. And I know we're going to have you back on the show where we can discuss a lot of these other cool topics that you're interested and clearly an expert on. So I'm looking forward to that. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, Lauren. I look forward to speaking with you again soon.
Thank you so very much for listening. As always, if you enjoyed the episode, please leave us a review in iTunes or wherever you listen to your podcasts and share it with your friends.